which is co-authored by Chima et al. In 2013. We have also utilized various other sources like online newspaper archives and websites of provincial assemblies to gather their data. So these are some basic statistics from our explanatory table, which shows that around 51% of our sample are dynastic politicians. So we also calculated another variable, which is experienced dynastic politician, which means that a dynast who has served more than one tenure in the parliament. So our third variable is basically ruling party dynastic MP, which means that a dynast who is basically from the ruling party. So this is the special distribution of dynasties in Punjab. So you can see that dynasties are fairly evenly distributed across Punjab. So these two graphs basically shows the experienced dynasts and ruling party dynasts. So these are the you can say these are our control variables which we have used in our regressions. So our empirical strategy basically heavily based on Wallace regression. So our dependent variable Y is basically the doctor present, doctor assigned, and log tenure of the doctor. And on the other side, we have dynastic MP and the other variables which are our control variables for this regression. So in order to basically substantiate this analysis, we have also used GRDD regression design, geographical regression continuity design, which I will explain when I will come to the results. So when it comes to the results, this table basically shows the OS regression results for our all of our three outcome variables. So if you see the first panel of this whole table, these are the results for when our outcome variable is doctor assigned. So you can see the negative impact of a dynastic MP on outcome variable, but this effect is not significant, you can say. Then in second panel, our outcome variable is doctor present. In this case, you are also seeing the negative impact of dynastic politician on the presence of doctor, but this result is also not statistically significant. In the third case, we have our quality variable as outcome variable. So in this case, you can see that dynastic politicians are basically affecting the doctors which are high in quality, and some of these regressions are statistically significant. Now I'm discussing, I'm going towards the result of RDD. So if you see the results from RDD, you can see that for all benefits, results are quite similar to those of OLS regressions. There is no significant result in terms of doctor assigned and doctor present. But if we look at the doctor tenure results, you can see that around 2 of the 5 regressions are statistically significant. So after these baseline results, we can just look at some other explanations as well. So in this table, basically we are explaining that how experienced dynastic politicians affect our health-related outcomes. So you can see that these results are quite similar to the baseline results, that there is no impact of experienced dynastic politician on doctor assigned, doctor present, as well as tenure of the doctor. If you look at how the dynastic MPs from ruling party affect the health services, you can see that doctor assigned and doctor present are not statistically significant in this case as well. But if you look at the doctor tenure regressions, you can see that there are some regressions which shows that there is statistically significant result of tenure of the doctor, of dynastic MP on tenure of the doctor, and these regressions are full specification regressions. So it means that dynastic MPs from ruling party are basically affecting the log tenure of the doctor. So finally, we are also looking at how the competition within the constituencies affect all these things. So in this case, we are just multiplying our variable of dynasty with competition to get some results which are basically interrupting competition and dynasty. So you can see that in this case as well, we don't have the positive impact of doctor assigned and doctor present. So, but for doctor tenure, we can see the positive impact of dynasties on doctor tenure. So, if we summarize these findings, we have just shown that there is no impact of dynastic MPs on quantity of the public service provided by public services, but we have also saw the positive impact of dynastic MP on the services on the quality of the services. We have also looked at some other explanations, and we saw that dynastic members who have served more than one term in the parliament are unable to mobilize public services for their respective constituents. We have also seen that MPs, dynastic members from the ruling party, basically are able to mobilize more quality services for their subjects. And we've also shown that competition is also basically affecting the performance of dynastic politicians. So, in summary, we can say that dynastic politicians are not affecting the quantity of services provided to their constituents, but they are basically affecting the quality of services being provided to their constituents. So, can we basically give some policy implications in this case? I think this study is not basically not based on too many things. So I think we are not in a position to provide any kind of policy implications from this study. But there is some more evidence coming on this in this issue as well. So we are basically doing a research with PIDE, which is basically it is on the political dynasties, but it is covering more dimensions related to development. But in context of this study, we can just give two raw policy implications. So the first policy implication, which might disentangle the politicians from public service delivery, is that if we devise the transparent posting and transfer systems in different sectors, we can say that it might be helpful in some way. And we can also think of a constitutional amendment which might control the politicians' role or bureaucracy. So these might be some policy implications which are coming from this study. So that's all from me. Thank you.
So Noman, since your discussant is not here and I requested the entire audience to play the role of the discussant, so I will start from a couple of questions and then I will ask everybody to join in. I think the most important thing here is whenever we say or we conduct a research in economics, we start from an economic theory. And we try to connect the exogenous and endogenous variables in a meaningful way so that we can derive some economic implication and contribute to economic theory as well. In your case, if you go to your empirical model, okay, so now we have on the left hand side a health outcome, whether a doctor is present or not, or whether what's the tenure of the doctor. And on the right hand side, we have a dynastic MP who has whose family is involved in the politics, and he is member of the parliament. And you think that the MP is actually affecting the outcome, which is YICJT, which is the tenure of the doctor, or it can be the presence of a doctor, and so on. Could you explain to the audience actually what makes you think to this this very postulate that the dynastic MP is actually affecting the variable that you say is affecting, that is YIJCT?
So, as I've already basically said here that there is no transparent tenure-based transfer and policy system related to doctors. So we have already seen that politicians basically interact in some way by affecting the transfer and policy of public servants.
Is there any theoretical evidence of that? Is there?
I have some recorded evidence. I was the victim of that, but I think the study which I am quoting here is Michael Callan, 2016 and 2018. They are also basically arguing the same thing, but they are doing it differently. So their hypothesis is also the same, and it's published.
My final question, and then we will go to the audience. So in KP, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we have health card. Okay. Now I have the liberty to go to any doctor in any hospital. So how your model will change in the presence of a health card?
I don't think so. It will change much, because health card is kind of irrelevant to the model of this study. In this study, we are basically just looking at how the politicians are affecting new doctors.
Your dependent variable is basically the presence of a doctor. So if I have a health card, I can go to any doctor who is present. So your dependent variable is no longer relevant in the presence of a health card, you know?
Yes.
Or you can counter argue this.
If you have a health card, you can go everywhere in KPK, but I am basically interested in studying that particular hospital which is adjacent to IM Sciences, and whose politician is someone who is elected from the Peshawar basically. So my basically unit of analysis is not.
So now we are open to the audience.
The question is that like the politicians are somehow presented in a very negative manner. And as you give the example of health card as well, I believe so far the first and last success of this government is, I believe, the health card. So, and that is the health card is because of the politicians again. So here I don't understand that why are you putting some curbs and restrictions and constitutional restrictions on politicians over bureaucracy. It should be the other way around, and the politician should be given more power. They should be working completely independent of the unelected institutions, bureaucracy, and other elected institutions, judiciary. And there was one another which I don't want to say, everyone knows that. So I don't understand this point, and the other point is that you have differentiated between the dynastic politicians and the so-called normal politicians. How come that could be a difference? I believe politicians, whether they are from belonging to, you know, any dynasty, or if they have come for the first time. Did you?
Yes, I got your question. So, and please correct me.
इनका सवाल जो है वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट के हवाले से है, जो मैंने आखिर में बात लिखी है। तो जब मैंने ये स्लाइड प्रेजेंट की थी तो उस वक्त भी मैंने कहा था कि बेस्ड ऑन दिस स्टडी वी कांट बेसिकली गेट एनी काइंड ऑफ पॉलिसी इम्प्लिकेशंस, लेकिन ये जो चीज़ें हो सकती हैं जो की जा सकती हैं। अब मैं आपको ये नहीं कह रहा कि पॉलिटिशियंस की हर बात पर जो है उनको उनकी जो करने के लिए लगा ली जाए। I'm just talking about one specific thing, which is basically that they are using their de facto political power to basically affect the transfers and other things related to that. इसी तरह से आप देख लें कि कुछ ऐसे पॉलिटिशियंस भी हैं जो अपने असूल को इस्तेमाल करके दूसरे इलाकों से रिसोर्सेज जो हैं जो उनको एलोकेट हुए होते हैं वहाँ से लाकर अपने इलाकों में उनको कर लेते हैं, जिसकी वजह से आपको ये चीज़ नज़र आती है कि स्पेशल इनइक्वालिटी होना शुरू हो जाती है। आप पंजाब की
see, whenever you want to answer a question, please use your research, okay? Because that's what
yes, I'm basically doing exactly.
Any other
You're right,
question?
sir.
Please.
So,
Noman, there is another question for you.
Nor are they brought in by the bureaucracy. This is something which the multi-donor trust fund leke aaye. So how is it that we are associating transparency via social accountability with politicians, जबकि ये तो कभी भी इनका intervention नहीं था। RTI, RTS, ombudsperson, ये सब तो SAC interventions हैं और ये इनके हैं ही नहीं, किसी भी political body के नहीं हैं।
My apologies अगर मैं आपकी सवाल को। So, Dr. Rafiq is asking, has added to another dimension to the question, and he's saying that your conclusions are basically not coming out of the model that you have estimated. It's not directly clear to us. So you can probably comment on both.
Exactly. So I take the second question first. So सर का सवाल ये है कि पॉलिसी implications मेरे रिसर्च से नहीं आ रही, तो मैंने पहले भी ये अर्ज किया था कि on the basis of human research we can't basically give any kind of policy implications, but there is some more evidence coming on this topic, a concrete evidence. PIDE उसका हिस्सा है, उसको आप देखेंगे, उससे भी आपको काफ़ी चीज़ें समझ आ जाएंगी। तो उसको मैं तोड़ने के लिए ये कह रहा था कि अगर हम जो है रफली अगर बात करें तो ये दो चीज़ें हो सकती हैं जिससे मेरा इकोनॉमेट्रिक मॉडल जिसमें मैं ये बता रहा हूँ कि पॉलिटिशियंस किस तरह से हेल्थ आउटकम्स को अफेक्ट कर रहे हैं वो ख़त्म हो सकता है।
So we can take one more question if you want, please.
सर इन्होंने मैं ये मेंशन किया कि क्वांटिटी ऑफ द सर्विस इतना इफेक्ट नहीं हो रही पॉलिटिशियन के उसकी वजह से जितनी क्वालिटी इफेक्ट हो रही है, तो किस तरह इन्होंने क्वालिटी को कैसे मेजर किया है, क्वालिटी ऑफ द सर्विस को इन्होंने कैसे
Question is how did you measure the quality indicator of the doctor?
अच्छा, तो क्वालिटी का जो इंडिकेटर है डॉक्टर का वो हमने मेजर किया है कि डॉक्टर का एक्सपीरियंस कितना है इन मंथ्स, और उसका लॉग लेकर उसको हमने अपना आउटकम वेरिएबल बनाया है, जिससे हमें ये पता चल रहा है कि डॉक्टर की क्वालिटी जितना एक्सपीरियंस ज़्यादा है हम उसको ज़्यादा क्वालिटी जो है वो कंसिडर कर रहे हैं।
You and then we are done.
जस्ट डाटा सोर्स कंफर्म कर दीजिए।
Could you confirm the data source?
जी ये आपके सामने मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, जो माइकल कैलन है और उनके साथ कुछ और लोग हैं जिन्होंने ये रिसर्च की है 2018 में, उन्होंने ये डाटा कलेक्ट किया था और हमने ये डाटा प्रिपेयर किया।
Excellent data. Just a clarification on the data. It seems that I was looking at the average variable that 70% on average doctors was not present. Does that include those centers where a doctor was not assigned, which is about 30%?
So
if you can just clarify, because these are very large numbers.
The question is that whether you considered that a doctor is assigned to a particular BHU health center, whether the doctor is actually transferred there, but he's not, she's not working there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, these two variables are different variables. So doctor assigned mean doctor, whether the doctor is assigned to that hospital or not, and doctor present is basically capturing all those units or basic health units where doctor is basically assigned. So doctor present mean whether the basic health unit has the doctor, and if he or she is present at that particular day or not. So these two are kind of different variables.
Noman, thank you. I think let's close it.
Thank you. This is just the outline of the presentation proceeds. Very brief introduction, the rationale of the work, the literature, the proposed theoretical framework, and then we go to data finding and conclusion. Some of the salient points of the presentation. The paper tries to argue the resource capture by the very elite in one of the provinces of our country, and how that sort of resource capture is utilized for clientelism, and how it affects certain other sort of parameters and things like wickedness and poverty and development and those districts which are now properly represented in the elite circle. Why we are doing it? Because the province, I should mention, is heavily relies on federal transfers, which come through NFC vote and some other state transfers. And the 7th NFC vote, which was sort of implemented in 2009, changed the sort of fiscal transfer mechanism, which strengthened the fiscal position of provinces of Balochistan. And then we came up with this 18th Amendment, which gave certain autonomy to provinces, by the sort of now have this liberty of utilizing the resources which they get from the NFC transfers. But the point which I would try to sort of underline is that these two sort of reforms. So these two reforms could not bring a meaningful change to the economic and social landscape of our province. So therefore, the province which had been lagging behind other provinces further pushed to further backward for the provinces. So this is the kind of a thing which rationalizes the paper, because once the resources are transferred from the central government to the provincial governments, the provinces, they don't have any further mechanism to transfer the resources from the provincial capital to the districts, which are the third tier of government. So therefore, this resource pool which is made available to the provinces are at the very discretion of the politicians, for that matter, or the bureaucracy at the provincial level, because the Provincial Finance Commission, which used to be there till 2008, is very much dysfunctional. So therefore, there isn't any resource transfer mechanism which transfers resources from provinces to the local governments, as we do from center to the provinces to the NFC. Okay, so given this sort of understanding, our postulation is that this centralization, the second stage of centralization of resources, creates certain sort of capture by the very political and bureaucratic elite, which uses these resources for its vested interest or clientelism. Right. This is just the literature. I'm not going through the literature, which is discussed in thoroughly in the paper. My interest is this model. This basically gives the overall framework in which the paper is discussed. So here I need your attention. I try to make it as simple as possible, but it needs your attention again. For the sake of simplicity, we assume provincial economy, there are only 2 districts, and each district has 2 constituencies. 2 districts, 2 constituencies. Very simple. Individual, they are they differ in their sort of labor productivity, which is denoted by SI, and there is a sort of a density function. And there's also an individual wage rate, and the wage rate is linear in sort of productivity parameter. So the individual residing in constituency I in district A, there are 2 districts, A and B, and 2 constituencies, 1 or 2 in each district. There are 4 constituencies and 2 districts. Try to sort of absorb it. That individual receives a utility from its private or reservoir private consumption, as well as a G, that is a public good provided by the government. Okay, and there is again this utility because the person has to work and has to pay certain taxes. So here is the utility of that person. Private consumption, this utility of labor, and the G factor that comes from government. And we do the same for the second sort of the constituency B in district A. Okay, so and again, district A receives after-tax wage income as well as a provincial budget allocation. This B is very much important. This B sort of tells us that the very elite capture that I am going to argue in my work. So the consumption is the private consumption plus the B, which comes from the provincial government to their specific constituency or some matter to their district. In addition to the G. G is the government, the public good that is provided across the board in all districts. Okay, so again, there is a minimum wage, and the date is again the function of development. Whatever resources transferred to that specific district, they also sort of determines the wage which people of their district earn out of working in one of those projects. This is the equilibrium. Again, some jargons in economics, the government budgets. The budget is used for sort of 2 purposes. Each district receives a budget from the provincial government. Their budget is used for development purposes and for providing certain basic services like this.
5 minutes.
Okay. Just to grab the model.
So just come to the.
Okay. So yes, R is for both purposes, D and G, the development of public goods. say for the second district, and the government collects taxes to cover that, and it also above update D and G, there is a transfer which is B. B is very much important again. So in the bargaining game, this plays out, how it plays out. I mean, this is interesting. The finance minister or the senior minister or the chief minister, who they are at the very elm of affair, they make budget. They allocate disproportionately to their specific constituency or the district. Their budget can be debated, negated, but ultimately whatever they think good for their vested interest or for their constituency get approved by the assembly or the cabinet. So I mean, this again, the bargaining game goes on. So the provincial decision making. So we sort of characterize this as one constituency within one district out of those two districts basically dominates this entire budgetary allocation process. For example, the finance minister, or the chief minister comes from that constituency. It happens, and we see it everywhere in our country, in many developing countries. Disproportionately allocates resources to their specific region or area, the data which supports clientelism, or we call it capture. And this sort of transfer, which is B, is an additional transfer of that D and G we discussed earlier. So therefore, the proposition of this entire bargaining process is that the bargaining equilibrium, where all these stakeholders, MPAs or the senior bureaucrats, once they agreed on this B, which is increasing, disproportionately to their specific district or constituency. So whenever just one last 2 minutes. So the transfer from the federal government to the provincial government increases, this B will increase. The B is given to their specific constituency or district for that very specific purpose, and their specific purpose could be clientelism, or we call it lead capture. The elite is very much there deciding in which district gets how much, not based on certain very realities which relate to development or economic or social whatever. It is very much political. It is very much personal. So again, the empirical model which supports it. I just take last 1 minute to conclude it exactly.
I think if you can just one
yes,
the result.
I mean, here we see the deprivation of each district does not sort of determine the total fund allocation. Neither it does the share of each district's to the total number of projects which each year the provincial government passes. While on the other hand, we see that all these variables like chief minister, senior minister, chief secretary, additional chief secretary, they are very much instrumental in terms of sort of determining the funds allocation or the share of resources to their specific area of constituency. So the elite capture is there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these are some of the recommendations, which again from the discussion that overall we had in the paper, because unless and until there is a robust system of funds allocation considering the ground realities, things remain as bad or as good as they are. Thank you, sir.
First of all, the paper is around, just under 14,000 words. It's around 13,800 something. So I think it's a bit on the longer side. It's on the longer side, and I think the paper needs to be made more concise, and at the same time it also needs to develop more focus. Then, if you look at the title, the title suggests that the focus or objective of this study is both on evidence and theory in relation to political economy of lead capture and clientelism and resource distribution from Balochistan. This is again, I think, what I discussed and what I looked at it. It would be, better if you take two out of these three areas which you are looking to explore. The other thing is, the other general problem which I saw is that there are problems with flow, there are problems with structuring, there are also problems with numbering. If you look at section number 2, so it's starting from 2.1. Then also initially, there is a problem also of referencing. Can you explain what is a port barrel approach? What is a port barrel approach? Just for my understanding. You don't define it.
You want to focus on two things that he would like to respond to. Just two things for the audience and for all of us.
Sir.
Number one.
I just want I have so many things. I got 2 pages.
Just to 2 points so that he can respond.
It would be a bit less. I need 2 minutes, I think. I need just 2 minutes. I need 2 minutes. So I'll give this to you in writing as well. I'll give it to you in writing as well. Actually, anyways, one other thing which I looked at, the interesting point which you're making at the start is you were saying that the political economy basically can be divided into 3 based on the different regions in Balochistan, whether it's northern, whether it's central, whether it's southern. So it would be better if you include a table and tell us, the reader should be able to see what are the differences. The other thing, there are no research questions. There are no research questions and objectives. I think that is very important that it should be included. The other thing is,
thank you, Kashif. I'm grateful.
Would you like to respond?
This is a very wonderful suggestion from Ramsa. I think, it is a paper in the making. You see those discrepancies in structure and so on and so forth.
Questions from you? Suggestions, improvements, questions, whatever, comments? No?
Article, sir, just one topic, sir.
Please, you first.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I just wanted to ask that what is the mechanism of fund transfer in the other provinces from the 2nd tier to the 3rd tier?
Well, the problem is that the 3rd tier is dysfunctional. It is very much unfortunate. That is why this PFC is not working anymore. If you recall that in 2001 there was a devolution plan, a very wonderful plan it was. In according to that plan, there was a mechanism of resource transfer from the 2nd tier to the 3rd tier. Now the 3rd tier doesn't exist. It exists, but it is not functioning. So therefore, it is the very discretion of the provincial governments to transfer whatever resources they want to the districts. And normally they don't. They share
your question.
So it's not working.
Thank you, sir. My question is not that much technical, rather I'll be asking a layman's question. Sir, how do you fit in all this thing in a bargaining setting? Because what the theory tells us is bargaining is something where 2 or multiple groups are involved and they usually bargain over a thing. There are certain disagreement points, there are certain power asymmetries involved. So while we talk about transfer of funds, your study actually focuses on that. Do we have any mechanism where bargaining is even allowed? Regression model, fine enough. But putting this whole thing in a bargaining context, to me it is not understandable. So could you please explain?
Yes, I think the bargaining in the resource sharing is very much there. All these MPAs and
do they bargain over it?
Yes, people sitting there, everyone sort of tries to maximize his or her benefit by grabbing as many projects or resources from the provincial sort of exchequer as they can. I mean, once they reach to a consensus of passing a provincial budget or any budget, this is based on bargaining. I mean, just to give you an example, very recently we hosted one of the sitting chief ministers just based on this the very issue that I mean the entire opposition or some of the treasury members, they did not agree with the allocations which the then sitting prime minister, the chief minister did. They could not reach to a consensus based on certain bargaining principles.
So basically, that's an alternate approach to your theoretical model.
Sir, when you're talking of elite capture or when you're defining political economy, so you know, political economy is basically, when elite is either utilizing resources for itself or whether it's being used for the larger population, the benefit of the larger population. So when, because I saw in a number of places, you know, you say that ACS is the additional chief secretary.
Yeah.
So is it always the case that you know he is from this and this district in Balochistan? Because they're usually pass officers, so they're usually coming from outside. In many instances, I believe. So क्या आपने ये include किया है मतलब
Yes,
ये factor क्योंकि आप या कह रहे हैं कि ये एक district से है या दूसरे district से है?
ACS
PND वाला.
the PND SCS is included in that regression model as well. And the ACS plays a very pivotal role in that entire sort of project allocation. And ACS normally comes from the provincial services. The chief secretary comes from the federal services. So therefore, for the last, I say 20 years, the ACS are from Balochistan. So they represent their constituencies or districts from where they belong to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Kashif. We are starting the next presentation.
First of all, I am feeling really honored to be on this platform of PSDE, and I feel really obliged that I have been given an opportunity to talk about mechanized and quality audit of information industry in capitalistic economies. I am Samar Bas and I go after is Miss Aman. So first of all, talking about information industry, like due to paucity of time, it's very feasible to explain it in, I would say, one sentence, that any industry that is very information intensive in nature. And of course, media is the one of the the media industry is the one that produces and disseminates a lot of information. We will basically talk about it as a proposed regulatory model. It's not a pure any economic research or is about the economic modeling, rather it is about the media industry and the regulatory model. So its design is comparatively different than the pure economic research. So this is basically the sequence of presentation. Introduction, why media industry? How media is significant to consider as a part of information industry. Media is, as we all know, termed as the fourth pillar of the state, and it has a sequential role in public policy making. It has strong link with the building of strong knowledge-based economy. It has due importance in national security and promotion of software need of state. Then social cohesion and economic social stability is also very dependent on the media. We also know that although the media industry, who is such a great importance in public policy making, in building the knowledge economy, and of course the national security, the most important thing. The question is, which is the lifeblood of media? As the finance is the lifeblood of any financial firm, the lifeblood of media is content. So analyzing the content is very important, because content, although it might be same, but right now I am saying it in different way, and you would be automatically grasping in a different way. While if somebody else is saying the same thing in a different tone, the meaning will be interpreted entirely differently. So analyzing this abstract term, the content, although it's very hard to define. So this is basically the focus of the study, and we will propose the audit for this. Now, media and capitalist economies, as we all know that capitalistic economies are free market-based economies where there is private ownership, and capitalist economies have three major traits. One is profit motive, then there is competition, and then there is minimal government intervention. Now the profit motive basically drives them to disseminate the information as a valued good. As it, like, I would say the commodification of information is very prevalent in case of media industry, and they want to catch that the information that is reached to them. Controlling the dissemination of information, the way it is disseminated, and understanding it is very important in context of the capitalist economy, then it is very clear right now. This commodification basically impacts the content's objectivity, the impartiality and credibility, and it would be more explained and more clearer in the later part of the presentation. So the study objectives are basically provision of quality-rich content via print, electronic, and new media, and secondly, devising a mechanism for internal and external quality content quality audits, streamlining the healthy competition through credibility-based branding. It is comparatively new thing because there is no literature review on this, because till now there are TRP rates. How many people are watching the TV? It's not about how many, it is about what is being sold, what is being distributed in the information economy, because we all know that information is the new oil in the capitalist economies, and this oil is kind of used as a commodity. This study basically provides pragmatic model for media regulation. Now, by specifically describing the abstract term content that is in audio, that is in video, and infographic, it comprises content of electronic media, traditional media, and digital news channel, and it excludes any dedicated entertainment, sports, religious, and academic channels. We are not including that in our study due to limitations of the study. Moving on to research background, media framing theory. Media framing theory, in simpler way, it is like media actually sees in its own eye. But when we consume media as a consumer, we are seeing it from the eye of the media. We are thinking from the frame through which media is showing us the picture. The one most prominent example is that is very hugely debated even, that whenever there is some killing by Muslim, it is normally termed, because the media setup basically frame it, and I'm talking about the international media, that maybe the person is terrorist. If he is a Muslim, it is Islamophobia. But when the same person is not from the Muslim community, like it's non-Muslim, it is normally the frame settings, he might have some mental disorder. So this framing has huge subconscious, unconscious influence on the way we decipher the meaning of media. Media forms public perception and sets agenda for public policies. There is issue of cross-media ownership and media concentration as well. In case of economics, the biggest obstacle is wealth concentration, and in case of information industry, the major enigma is information concentration. So this basically impacts development of knowledge-based economy. So in sum, I would like to say that balanced content dissemination is imperative for effective policy making and sustainable democracy, because if the content is polarized in nature, the policy making will be polarized, and such policy making will be ineffective in nature. Now moving on, fake news. Fake news is the nowadays called as the biggest challenge to sustainable democracy, and these are intentionally created to mislead and misinform users, and it is used for agenda. These are also used by the governments across the world, the fake news, for carrying out their agenda, but at the translation front, these are used as for the fifth generation warfare. Now, because of new media, the social media and digital media, these are wide to reach and these are hard to detect because of them, thanks to machine learning, the trolls and the bots. Fake news versus economics of emotion, it is basically when we know that these are huge negative economic, social and cultural repercussions, then why fake news? Because the financiers and the advertisers are the huge dependent for the media houses, and they have to fulfill their obligations, so they go for it. The answer to this is information credibility, through which we can build a fake news, and this is also proposed in our regulatory model. Moving on, fifth generation warfare, though the wars are no more traditional in nature, rather these have changed. This is time of information. So there are information wars, there are economic wars. The economic wars are highly dependent on information, because one negative news can significantly impact the part of the stock market, the very quick indicator of any economy. So it basically works on the triple C formula, but because lack of time I'm unable to explain that. It threatens national security, leading to international branding as unsafe, corrupt, terror financing. Unfortunately, Pakistan is Now, coming to that. Pakistan's presence in grey list strata of disinfo labs also. So, answer to this is constructive journalism. Finally, ethical journalism is very missing in case of Pakistan. So, ethical journalism values accuracy, principle of independence, impartiality, humanity, accountability, and qualification must be taken into account. This is proposed regulatory framework where content equilibrium is the main focus. Content equilibrium is function of content representation based on social, economic, political, and cultural theme. Provincial representation, information credibility, constructive value of content, state narrative, and tone of media, as I've already told, and ethical value of the content. Here, the content representation, economic, political, social, and cultural, we have proposed that there should be 30% representation for both economy and politics each, while there should be 20% representation for culture and social content. Second parameter is provincial representation, and we have used the number of speakers for each province in this. Then for information credibility, these are the 4 parameters. First one, trustworthy source of information, publisher's credibility, and same content shared by other media channels. Now moving on, constructive value of the content. Here 0 for persona driven, which is not shared by the experts, but 1 for the value driven, that is number of subject expert card. No stale content should be there because stale content lose its value, and level of constructive and investigative journalism is included in it. State narrative, state article 19, we all are aware of it, and this must be kept in view while disseminating any information. Moving on, ethical value. Now, how would we measure it? For each category or subcategory, the content will be measured on the scale of 1 to 10 because it is qualitative in nature. Media audit process, like how finally they are going to do it, is basically going for the healthy media competition. First of all, there are 3 stages. First is planning stage, then is evidence gathering stage, and then finally is completion stage. Again, with paucity of time, I'm able to. Finally, the conclusion is very much here that if any content that is either economic, social, political, or cultural in nature is polarized in nature, it would basically result in polarized public policy debate, polarized public policy decisions, leading to ineffective public policy, and it would eventually hurt the sustainable democracy. Knowledge-based economy will also not work because the people, the consumer of that information would have polarized opinions. So, for building in the healthy competition and credibility-based reporting, this regulatory model is there. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent.
Then, when you talk about the lack of impartial, credible, and constructive balanced media, there are 2 things you mentioned, course and Braga and actually 2010. There are 2 things over here. One, balanced media, or when you talk about balanced journalism, and I'm sure maybe the audience will be asking you this question as well, that how do you define balanced journalism? Since I have been through the text of your paper, I think it would be probably best that you define that. Yeah. Okay. There are other things too, but we'll just move swiftly on. The model that you have given, that is when you talk about the different variables, she talks about the different inputs of the function there. Yes, that was good to see that you were able to back up every variable from the literature. So that was a good thing. However, when you talk about state narrative, and then you saying that you are saying that the state narrative should be kept in mind by the media. You also mentioned in your paper that media firms should not be acting like businesses. So, as economist, I would ask you why not? And secondly, the regulatory framework that you have given, it's good, and I should have started with this, that sir, in Pakistan, in our area, in Orient, entire Orient, we are afraid of coming up with new ideas, with innovation. We think that it is the job of the West only to come up with new things. So it was good to see you taking up the challenge, coming with something new, something which is, however, I would just suggest one thing. In your concluding section, you mentioned there is no literature available on auditing frameworks. However, dear student, you have actually built on literature, based on which you have given us this model. So there is literature available. Yes, that is the thing that media auditing itself hasn't been discussed. You'll get the complete document. Very good. It was good reading your paper, and it was even better listening to you here in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, like these were really worthy because this was a new idea, so we were kind of very curious about why not to present it for on a forum where we can get greater input so that we can improve it because it is basically proposed regulatory framework. So first of all, like you were saying that there is competition, then there is a very macro and the news has written a book on this that there are 8 media firms across the world who are basically controlling the media. Like 8 media firms, Disney, and things like that, like these are controlling the CNN and different media houses and other publishers and even the books publishers. These are being controlled by under the umbrella business. So basically this is cross media ownership and this is challenging the competition under one umbrella, under the 8 umbrellas basically. While talking about that, either this was new, yes, it was new in a way, not in a way that we were backing each and everything from the literature because it is how the the limitation of the research that we have to back each variable from the literature review. But the exact regulatory framework, while we were searching for in case of US and UK, we were basically even Japan and other capitalist economies, we were unable to find any in the media regulatory institutions like MOIB is here.
So stop there. Anyone else would like to contribute or ask any question or anything? You?
No, we have to go. We have to finish the session by 5.
Okay. Just brief comment and then we are done.
One other thing, we talked about state narrative, yeah? So state narrative isn't supposed to be followed by the media. Principle, okay? A state narrative can be wrong. For example, sir, maybe you remember the Abu Ghraib prison case. You guys would be, I think, going to school at that time, but we remember
yes, of course, the whistleblowers are always needed to challenge the sometimes.
So thank you very much, guys. You were wonderful listeners, and you participated in the list. That's the audience I want. I hope you enjoyed. I have 3 questions for some. The session is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.